So yeah, yes, that title is 100% accurate. In 2 weeks, I coded and made and graphic designed and mapped and blew sprinkled powder and made a game that is better than Doom Eternal in just 2 weeks. No, I didn't actually do that. What I did do is I coded a game that basically has all the movements, all the concepts, and can basically do everything that Doom Eternal can. And it's cool. We got the dashes, we got the double jumps, we got the meat hook, we got people getting shot and getting their head blown off. And what I really want to focus on in this video is how I started learning how to code about a month and a half ago, and I was actually able to code to where we are right now, almost in about 3 weeks. And how did I do this first and foremost? Well, I am the world's most successful YouTuber. I am extremely woke. I am an empty house business advice guy. If you don't know, if you're new to this channel, you're welcome. And I also cut my own hair now. And I code. If you can't tell, I'm a Mensa talented, cool guy. But more so, last video, a lot of people asked, how did you learn how to code like this? How did you learn how to do this? And while I'm not a coding master, and while I don't do the animations and I don't do the artwork for my game, I did get to the level where I can basically code and solve any problem code-wise almost in about 4 weeks' time. And so what I want to do is I want to walk you through how I did that, because a lot of people asked how I did that, and give you the courses and the strategy I use to not master code, but get to the level where I can basically code any type of video game I want and understand the code that I'm writing in only about 30 days. So I'm gonna put some gameplay footage and just stuff I was doing in the background, and let's just get into it. So about a month and a half ago, I decided to get started learning Unity and C#. And if you're thinking about learning code, you've probably considered looking at Unreal Engine or Unity. And then Unreal Engine uses C++, Unity uses C#. And if you're thinking about getting started, you've probably put this decision in your head for forever, and it's been confoodling you, or you've looked at Unreal Engine and C++, and you're like, that seems ridiculous. And so it's pretty important to understand where to start first and foremost. I really suggest that you start with C# and Unity for just 2 reasons. One, C# is a lot easier than C++. I've learned or got started on C++, and while in theory what you're doing in code is similar and the way things work together in theory sort of are similar, if you learn C#, for example, you're going to have an understanding of how to think about code, which will help you with C++. But C++ is much harder than C#. There's also way more to keep in mind when you're coding with C++, and C# on the other hand is just, it's simple. It's easy to read, and on top of that, Unity is far easier to use if you're a beginner or advanced. Unreal Engine's unruly. It has everything in there. It's a nice system. It's more complete, but you got to think about Unreal Engine is kind of more like a huge everything in it box that massive teams can all come together and work in, which is awesome. It's technically a superior program to Unity, in my opinion. Graphically, it's a little bit superior as well, but if you're just getting started, you're not going to be working with a large team. Okay, I only work with 2 other people right now, an animator and a level designer. You're not going to be going for realistic graphics. You're not going to be doing that. There's no reason to do that in the first place. So Unity is going to be your better bet. It's easier to pick up and it's easier to learn code-wise. Now, the reason why you want to focus on what's easy is because the number one important, coolest thing that you should focus on when you're learning code, in my opinion, is keeping your momentum going. And if you hit points where you're confused or you get stuck a lot or you have to spend too much time learning dry, boring code, and let me back up and give you some context to that. You need to know code and you need to be good at coding. I see all these videos where people talk about how to code games with like Bolt or visual scripting. You can technically do that. I don't use visual scripting because I think it's actually harder than just writing the code, but you need to know code. What I mean by learning code is that there's 2 different ways to learn code. There's learning code by doing and actually working on a project that's fun. For example, I've learned most of my coding skills from actually working on my own project. And that might seem like I'm piecing things together and building a parachute as I go, but it's fun. And that's a more engaged way to learn code, and you're going to learn more realistic application of the code quickly. And it's very important to get to that phase as quickly as possible where you can actually start working on your own projects that interest you, because then you're going to be interested to develop your code skills. When you're first starting off, you have to learn base code, and the best way to do that, and I'm going to get started with what I actually did here, is you can go take a Code Academy class, or there's also a really good master class on Udemy. I'm not going to give affiliate links. You can just I'll just put the names of what I got below. I don't want to do affiliate links and try and make money off you. That being said, doing these courses is really boring. I didn't enjoy it, and it was the worst part of learning code. Not because the courses are bad, it's just code is not exciting on its own, okay? It's like building your own building, working on your own actual architecture project is way more fun than learning about how beams go together. And you just got to think about it like this. If you were actually working on building your own skyscraper, working with a team, seeing your vision come to life, that's really engaging. It's fun. And it's easy to keep moving forward and learn as you go. Learning about how beams connect and how cement glues together, it's not going to make anyone's day. So what you want to do when you're starting to learn code, at least in my opinion, is you want to get through the actual book learning as fast as possible. And then as soon as you have some solid grasp on it, just enough to actually read the code and say, okay, that's a loop, that's an if statement, that's a variable, that's a coroutine, that's a float, that's a bool. You know what you're looking at. You really, in my opinion, should not do any more book learning or boring learning. The way I learned super quickly is as soon as I got about 50% through with the Code Academy course, is I jumped straight into a course where I actually started learning to make games. And on most channels where people talk about learning code, they don't really say this. And so that's why I'm making this video. Because I technically didn't have the coding experience or knowledge or know-how to actually start these courses. That being said, once you start taking a few of these courses and start making your first video game, the courses, you can really follow along with them. You can basically just code with them. And yes, at that point, you're basically copying, pasting, and writing down exactly what they write. But you're actually seeing things come to life, and you're actually seeing things come to life, and you're seeing the application right in front of you. So it gets you excited, it motivates you to get forward. So instead of going and writing a password check, you're seeing how to blow a zombie's head off, and you're seeing all the things that go into that. Now, after that first time doing it, you're not really going to have the experience to go and then just write your own code, but you're going to have enough experience so they'll actually see how the code works together. And so you're going to be able to progress through these video game courses. Then what I suggest you do to learn code quickly, at least what I did, is as soon as you get bored with the course or you are in a part of the course that you find boring, move to a part of the course that you find exciting, or move to another course that focuses on something you find exciting. So for example, I really wanted to make my own first-person shooter, and I wanted to make something that's like Doom, but way more fast and a lot more movement-based. I know that sounds ridiculous because you look at Doom Eternal, and you're like, that's what it is. You'll see. I'm not trying to beat or make another Doom. It's just kind of the inspiration behind it. So I went and dove straight into an FPS course. And what I also suggest you do is think about the first game you want to make. Maybe you don't want to make a game right away, which is also fine too. I've not been doing this long, so I can't give you the best advice ever. But from my experience, pick a course that is going to show you how to design kind of the type of game you want to make, because when you finish the course, you're going to have the bones of a video game that you want to make. You're not going to have a complete video game, or you're going to have a really crappy video game, because of course video games aren't good, but you're going to have the structure and the bones and the architecture, and more importantly, you're going to understand how the architecture works together. For example, if you go and download someone else's game, or you download my game right now and you had all the codes, even if you're an experienced programmer, it's going to be very, very confusing. When you first get started in coding, for example, you're going to be tempted to download a lot of templates or pre-made assets that are basically going to bring parts of other games into your game. For example, when I first got started, that basically brings all the functionality of a first-person shooter, all the cool things like dashing and sliding and shooting and weapons. It basically brings it all into your game, and it's just there from the start. If you're a really experienced programmer, that's fine. But if you're not, you shouldn't do that, not because it makes learning slower. No, it's not about doing things the hard way. It's because there's so many layers of the code that going and just getting the few things you want to do, it's just a mess, because you have to dig through so much code and so much stuff in there, and you don't know how it all goes together, and there's going to be tons of files interacting. And then most importantly, it's going to have all this excessive stuff in there that you don't want in your game. And so what I suggest doing is you go and develop based on a course. And then when you finish the course, again, you're going to have the bones, and you're going to understand how the bones all go together. And so then you're going to be in a position to actually start building the game that you want to make. I'm just editing this, and this wasn't very clear then as I look at it. When you finish with the course, okay, what you're going to have is code all put together that you can then build on top of for the game you want to make. And because you understand how the code all goes together, which is like 9/10 of the battle, you can actually build on top of it and add and remove things quite easily. Whereas if you take a game or a pre-made something, You remove one thing, the whole entire thing explodes. You put something in, the thing explodes. And you have all these other things. In every layer of code, every additional excess in there is a layer of something that can explode if you don't know how it works. And if you have lots of things and you don't know how it works, you can't take things in and out. And so you just end up with a bunch of explosions, which is terrible if you're a new developer, because you're like, what the fuck is happening? And then at that point, what I suggest you do is you just take it one problem at a time. You don't need to learn how to be a master developer, okay? And frankly, when you're learning code, if you learn how to solve one problem, you're not going to have trouble solving it again. So for example, one of the first problems that I had was learning how to make the AI predict where I was going to run to in the game and throw bullets there instead of where I was. Because if you have your AI throwing bullets at where you are and your character's moving quickly, they're never going to hit you. They're always throwing the bullets behind you. So what I did is I sat down and said, okay, this is the problem. I've just built this first-person shooter based off this course, but the AI and everything, and it sucks. So how can I make better AI that's more interesting to fight? And so what I did is I went out and I learned how to program predictive algorithms for the AI, and that sounds way more complicated than this. You can go out there and find a prediction method, and you can look at how it works, and you can plug it into your game, and you're going to have to understand how it goes in your game, and it takes a while to understand how to take code from here and then make it so it works with your code. There's a lot of plugging and playing and putting in parts together, but now I easily know how to make AI predict where I'm going to go. Or for another example, I needed to figure out how to make my player dash. So what did I do? I went and looked up a bunch of tutorials on YouTube and looked at how they coded in dashes. I then looked at how my player moved in the game and how my player controller worked, and then I took those mechanics and then I put them into my game, and I had to code these ones up actually so they didn't translate over like the prediction algorithm. And as you solve more and more of those problems, you're going to run into new problems that are similar to other problems, and you're going to be able to take that knowledge and then apply that to other problems, and then look at code you've already written and say, okay, this is how this problem was solved. I am going to twist this up a little bit and apply it like this. For example, early on in development, I needed to make a AI that would change destinations and go somewhere else in the map when they took a certain amount of damage. Now, I've also coded many types of different guns and used raycast in the game. So this morning, I needed to figure out how to get my Ghost AI to dodge after 2 seconds of being aimed at. And so what did I do? I took the information from when I was learning how to code the AI to go to a certain part of the map, and then I also took the information from basically using raycast, which is when you point a gun into something, which is when you point a gun at something, it's going to shoot out this little laser, and if that laser collides with something, so on and so forth. The Ghost is able to detect that, and when he detects that, he counts to 2, and then moves to certain destinations on the map very quickly and accelerates his movement speed. And I learned how to accelerate their movement speed based on a time count by coding another AI, or tank. So you're going to see that when you actually get started, if you can just rush to the part where you're actually making a game that you're interested in right away, because then what happens at that point is it's going to seem like you're actually coding your own game and whatnot, but what you're really actually doing is taking 3 to 4 coding classes every single day, and you're completing them super quickly because you're super interested, because it's actually being applied to what you're building. You're working on your own skyscraper. And once I did that, my ability to code, my ability to recode, my ability to actually design the video games and make everything work together skyrocketed. I went from learning about, this fast to just a complete upward curve. To this point, I don't actually really need to look at tutorials. There's very few problems I run into in my game that I haven't written similar code to before. And so a lot of times I can look at, okay, I just made the tank speed up and do this thing. I used this time counter over here. I made our grapple hook over here. If I can combine these codes together, I can make it so that I can actually grapple pull people to me and then shoot them in the face with my shotgun. And then, I know how to make models disappear now, so I can just make the tank's head disappear and explode into chunks, because I did a bunch of other exercises before that were similar to that. That's how I learned coding so quickly. There's no magic to it other than I would watch the video before this where I talk about how to use what I call nightmare mode. But once I understood what I wanted to do and I understood the process and I understood how to discipline my mind and get myself in a focused state where I basically didn't talk to people for almost 3 weeks. I didn't leave my house, didn't watch any TV, didn't do anything except sat around and code, because it's fucking fun. That's the key. You find something that's fucking fun. And the reason why I wanted to wrap this all up for you is because for the longest time, I thought learning code and making your first video game, it would take 6 months of learning code. And I'm going to tell you straight up, if I had to sit around for 6 months and take Code Academy classes and learn C# structure, I wouldn't have been able to do it. And that's what a lot of people, I think, do. And my urge when I first got started was complete the entire C# course and complete all this code learning and get the fundamentals done. No. Just skip, run directly into the game, and sure, your code is not going to be optimal. When I go back and look at some of the code I wrote at the beginning of the game, it is spaghetti code. It's going to need to go back and get refactored, but I got things done and I learned very quickly, and now I can look back and see the problems of the code and actually understand how to fix the code. That also being said, one thing I want to stress in video game development, if you are interested in getting into it, because I know a lot of people watching this are, it's actually not that hard, okay? I would say that the code behind my software company, Hyros, much more difficult because there's all sorts of things interacting with each other, sending data back and forth. The code for video games, while it isn't simple, it's very repetitive once you get into it. The way things move, the way things go from point A to point B, the way things interact with each other. Once you see one situation, once you see 50 situations, every situation you see after that is pretty similar to it. And so that's how I coded a game that has all the functionality of Doom Eternal. Wink, wink. And how I developed this skill set from what other people say, lightning fast. If you want to see how to get the focus and willpower to do this, I suggest you watch this video that will pop up over here when the video ends. And I really suggest you understand how to do dopamine detoxes, because if you don't understand how to do that, you're going to want to go and watch TV instead of learning how to code. And TV doesn't teach you how to code. So that's it.
Overdrive engaged.
Getting triggered.
Overdrive engaged.